I sat in the passenger seat of the Uber, my life flashing before my eyes. This driver was a crazy person, there was no doubt in my mind about that. My friend Smilf Hunter and I had eaten a couple cannabis gummies and some acid while waiting for the car to arrive. This turned out to be a terrible idea. Now I felt like my heart might explode. There's lizard people in the bars, the woman with the frantic, racing eyes said. She said her name was Jenny. Physically, she only looked 19 or 20, but her eyes were ancient and haunted. Her hair was clumped and unwashed. Her blue eyes shone with some kind of lunatic gleam. Otherwise, she was fairly pretty with pale skin and high cheekbones. She looked very thin, however, as if she hadn't been eating much lately. They look like people sometimes, but they can take off their skin. They can change. Jenny continued. She drove 40 miles an hour on the highway in the fast lane. An endless caravan of cars stretched behind us. People would try to merge into the middle lane and pass by, flipping us the bird or screaming profanity out their windows. As they went, she decided to change lanes. I knew what was coming. It was bizarre and terrifying. I mentally steeled myself. She would flash the turn signal left and right, as quickly as she could. It didn't matter whether she was merging left or right, she would always just end up flicking it up and down. I asked her why she did this. She gave me a very logical answer. If the lizard people are following us, I don't want them to know where I'm going, she said, giving me a sly grin and a wink. After her trick with the blinkers, she just went for it, merging into the other lane with a squealing of brakes and a cacophony of honking horns. Why not just eschew using your blinker then? I asked, blinking slowly and trying to comprehend her logic. I saw car headlights inches away from me, and I repressed a very strong urge to scream, because that is what they are expecting. She cried triumphantly, smiling wide, apparently not even realizing the absolute danger we were in. I seriously doubt any of them are following an Uber driver around, Smilfy said, his black eyes smoldering like coals. I gripped the armrest tightly, my knuckles white, as Jenny did another lane change. I was tempted to have her just drop us off here and pay her, because I literally thought I might die at any moment, and not some LSD ego death, where SH Pongo played in the background, while a feeling that this has all happened before pressed in on me. No, this was the real death, the wet one with crunching bones and total agony. The only problem was that we were on the highway, and there wasn't another exit for at least 10 miles, and I certainly didn't plan on walking down the breakdown lane. I sighed heavily. Smilfy, who had eaten about 5 hits of some ice cream cone kid blotter I had gotten earlier, sounded like he might be hyperventilating in the back. He was a tough cookie, though. Smilf Hunter had done 14 years in prison for a house he burned down with an old lady inside. The old woman got out, but her house was totally destroyed. Ironically, that house was next door to the house I grew up in. I remember the fire, being woken up as a small child and taken outside to see the dancing flames. He was about 20 years older than me, but we had some mutual friends in the local art circles, and I found him very interesting. I liked to have long conversations about life with him while we walked through the woods. But still, Smilf Hunter absolutely loved fire. Whenever we had a bonfire, he would stare into it for hours, seemingly entranced and hypnotized by the flickering tongues of flame. "Hey Goblin," Smilf Hunter said to me. "How are you doing?" "Hasn't fully hit yet," I said, looking at my phone. It had only been about 15 minutes since I had eaten the blotter. I had only eaten 3 hits, at least this time, so I was expecting it to take a while to kick in. When I ate 15 or 20 hits of powerful acid at once, though, it would kick in within a couple minutes. Smilf Hunter and I were heading to a party for New Year's Eve. 6 kegs of beer supposedly awaited, along with everything else imaginable, from tanks of nitrous to lines of ketamine to chocolate hearts filled with magic mushrooms. "What about you?" I said, turning to Smilfy. His face seemed to melt slightly as the dark aura that always surrounded him whipped and sizzled like electricity. He shrugged. "A little," he said. "Yeah, a little. Give it an hour." I remembered back to the last strong acid trip I had taken a few weeks prior. I had felt my heart chakra opening like a flower with 1,000 differently colored petals. A sense of pure bliss had risen up through my spine and into my crown like a spiraling snake. I had seen lines of pure energy running across the land, the trees, and plants dancing in the wind in their own secret language. But this acid trip would turn out to be hell on earth, and to this day I still get nightmares every time I fall asleep thinking about it. We got off the highway. Is this the way? I asked, confused. I was tripping hard now. Dirty, abandoned buildings passed by. Rainbow-colored lights seemed to glisten and sparkle over their surface as the walls magnified and shrank in dancing waves. I wasn't from around here, and I didn't know the city. Neither did Smelfie, for that matter. Oh yes, Jenny said enthusiastically. She didn't use a GPS or any sort of assistance at all, and that worried me slightly. However, her next comment worried me much more. Oh my god, look. She pointed at an ancient-looking man laying on a pile of tattered cloth on the abandoned sidewalk. It's a lizard person. Right here. She pulled over and stopped the car. Whoa, whoa, I said, putting my hands up. I looked back at Smelfie. He sat ramrod straight in the back seat, as stiff as a statue. He smoothed his dark hair over his forehead, his light olive complexion seeming to turn pale. Jenny opened the driver's door and got out, the car still running, and the headlights still on. I didn't see anyone else besides ourselves and the old man on the sidewalk. I found this odd even for a rundown, an abandoned part of the city. Goblin, Smelfie said, his voice angry and slightly hissing. Is this a prank on your part? I'm not finding it very humorous. He narrowed his eyes. I put up my hands. I did have a history of playing pranks, but I wouldn't have set this up. Bro, I swear to God, I have no idea what's going on right now, I said. This lady is absolutely nuts. He sighed. Let's get out here, he said. We'll walk if we have to, or call another Uber. I have no idea where I am or if the party is close, or if she's even taking us the right direction. I protested. But yeah, we could try calling another Uber. Let's go tell Jenny, Smelfie. And I walked the cracked, dirty street towards where Jenny stood, bent over the old man. The old man appeared to be dead, his sightless eyes staring up at the sky. My breath caught in my throat. Oh damn, I said. Is he? He's not dead, Jenny protested. They always do this during the metamorphosis. When they shed their human skin, they look totally dead. Their heartbeats and breathing even stop. But any moment now. She continued to stare intently down at the corpse. As I got closer, I could see his lips and fingernails had turned blue, his pupils dilated. He is definitely 100% dead, Smelfie said without emotion. Goblin, could I talk to you over here for a second? He pulled me to the side. We need to get out of here before the cops come, he whispered in a low voice, keeping eye contact. I noticed how patterns of reds and blues and yellows seemed to spiral around his body. The first true rising vibes of an acid frenzy had begun. I felt my pocket. In a flat piece of tinfoil, I had about 5 sheets, or 500 hits, of the ice cream cone kid blotter, minus the 8 massive hits I had cut out of it for me and Smelfie. Okay, let's just start walking. And I started to say, but I never got to finish the thought. From behind me, I heard a disturbing, ripping sound. I spun around and saw Jenny quickly backpedaling away from the old man's corpse. His skin started to bulge as if he had rats burrowing in it. The bulges ran across his face and neck. He began to twitch randomly as blood streamed from his ears and nose and mouth. His legs started to kick as if pedaling an imaginary bike. His fists clenched and unclenched. Now, I had done a lot of psychedelics in my life by this point. I could always tell exactly what was part of the drug and what was not. I knew the auras and trails of light and ability to see chakras were all just a part of the LSD, and I also instantly knew that this was not. His skin started ripping away with a sound like tearing paper. Something much larger started to emerge from beneath, a humanoid form. It had dark gray circles around lighter gray scales that ran all over its naked body. As it began to pull itself out of the tattered cloth and remnants of human flesh and skin, it turned its head and looked directly at me. Its eyes looked like cloudy white cataracts with something dark swimming underneath them. It had sharp, white spikes a couple inches long running over its shoulders and the top of its back. Its teeth glistened in the streetlights, sharp and predatory like the teeth of a lion. Gray claws emerged from its feet and hands. It took a long step towards Jenny. She continued to jabber and mumble. No, please, don't let the metamorphosis happen to me too, I heard her whisper. Smelfie grabbed my arm and spun me around. Run, goddamn it, he hissed. Get out of here. He started to pull me away, trying to sprint, but my feet felt like lead blocks. What about Jenny? I asked, feeling confused and overwhelmed. Screw Jenny, Smelfie yelled. As if to emphasize the point, we heard a reptilian growl. I looked back and saw the reptilian creature running at Jenny. It swiped its clawed fingers at her face. The flesh disintegrated into mutilated stripes. Her left eyeball burst open. Rivulets of vitreous fluid dripped down her bloody, torn open cheek as her eyelid hung on by tatters of mutilated skin. Jenny fell back, spattering blood all over the sidewalk and litter-strewn street. Then it turned its cloudy, inhuman eyes towards me and Smilfy. Waves of adrenaline coursed through my body. Panicked, I started sprinting, following closely behind Smilfy. The hard pounding of our sneakers against the concrete echoed through the empty slum. The much softer padding of the lizard's steps drew closer, but I didn't dare look back. With every smack of a shoe against concrete, I would see the colors of the sound, a sharp and panicked shade of red. Even in my mortal terror, the acid continued to shift gears on me. I started to feel an overwhelming sense of déjà vu, as if this had all happened the exact same way an infinite number of times before. In front of me, Smilfy's foot caught on a sidewalk curb as he sprinted for his life. As if in slow motion, I saw his body fly forwards, his mouth a grado of surprise. I glanced back, seeing the lizard creature only a few feet behind us. Reaching into my pocket, I pulled out my folding knife, flicking it open. It felt like a paltry piece of nothing in my hand. But if I was going to die, I was going to try to take this thing with me. Come on, I screamed, a sudden feeling of calm and peace coming over me. I was ready. Come on, and it most certainly did. In a blur, it ran at me, swiping at my head with its clawed hand. I ducked, trying to stab it into the center of its chest. The blade hit it with a sound like metal striking concrete. The hard scales and bones were too much, though, and the knife didn't penetrate. I saw a superficial slash across its alien flesh. Smilfy had gotten up. He also had a knife, as always. He came up behind the creature and shoved the knife into the center of its face. It stuck into its two nose holes, a waterfall of blood gushing out. It gave a mechanical, ear-splitting shriek, pulling its head back. Smilfy's knife came with it. Fury slitted its eyes as it spun and tackled Smilfy. In horror, I watched its claws come down again and again on Smilfy's chest, neck, and face. I ran towards the abomination and jumped at it, tackling it to the ground. We wrestled for a few seconds, but it felt like wrestling a snake. Its body moved in inhuman ways, and it seemed to slither out of my grasp. Its warm blood covered my body before it quickly crawled away, using its claws to slide its scaly belly across the pavement. It jumped up to its feet in a single motion. I heard Smilfy's choked, bubbling breathing from nearby, and I knew he was severely hurt or dying. On the ground, I started to back away. The creature loomed over me like the angel of death. It seemed to give a sadistic smile as it raised its hand to deliver the killing blow. I saw a flash of light and heard the roaring of an engine. The creature's eyes widened for a moment as its head spun to face the new arrival. In a blur, Jenny's car smashed into the reptile. Its body smashed hard against the hood as she continued to accelerate into the brick wall of a factory. With an explosion of tortured metal and collapsing bricks, she crushed the creature between her car and the factory. She fell out of the car, stumbling to the right, and left before stopping to vomit blood on the ground. Her one good eye met mine for a moment. The entire front of her shirt and pants had become a mask of fresh blood. She tried to say something, and then collapsed. The lower half of the lizard's body had been crushed between the car's hood and the building. It continued to swipe its claws at air, growling and screaming in an ear-splitting cacophony. But over a few seconds, its movements slowed down, and its shrieking became more and more muted. Finally, with a gurgling grunt, it fell forward and did not move anymore. Later that day, I checked out Jenny's Uber profile. She had 5 stars, all superb ratings from people who had driven with her. Sighing, I decided to also give her 5 stars. It might have been a far-out Uber ride, after all, but it was certainly a night to remember.